Hello, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, and wherever we are in this wide, wonderful world that we live in, you're welcome to the Global Sales Leader podcast. I'm your host, Jason Cooper. I'm a sales strategist, sales coach. I help build long term relationships with clients. This series is all about insightful leaders from around the globe, from the areas of coaching, psychology, behavior economics, body language, and technology. And today we're talking a little bit more about technology and how it enables others and how we can connect others. And we're really talking about trends post COVID, where that's going. We're also talking about selling as a team sport. We have a phenomenal guest called Matt Compton here today from philo.co. I always want to say something else after .co, but I don't because there's nothing else to say. What does .co mean? I can never remember.
I think it was just for a company extension. Essentially, they ran out of .coms and they had to create a whole bunch more, which has been good for us in startups. But yeah, very nice to meet you, Jason. Thank you so much for having me on the show. CEO of philo.co. So go there and you can see what we do.
Awesome. Like I always like to dig into people's backgrounds before we get into everything else that we're going to discuss today. But what were the anchor points and the the way you got to where you are now and starting with your company? But tell me a little bit more about the background of Matt and how you've got to all this knowledge and this wonderful ideas that you came to fruition to where you are today.
Yeah, it's a great
Bit of
question.
a big question there.
Where I mean, pretty much everything that drives me is the fact that I like solving problems and I get bored easily, and that's taken me everywhere that I've gone throughout my career. So that led me to starting out my career as a software engineer, writing code for IBM, solving complex technology problems. Took me to business school, where I moved from the West Coast of the United States to the East Coast of the United States for business school. Got me connected into a company called Exact Target, where what we were doing was trying to solve our prospects and customers' problems. So we created a role called business consulting that did that in the pre-sales world, where we would fly in a set of management consultants pre-sales and spend multiple days with customers understanding what their problems are and how we could solve them and giving them a plan in order to do that, which was my introduction to the sales world. That company I was with was acquired by Salesforce.com, where I learned so much just from this phenomenal sales machine there. From there, built a startup of my own. So left in 15, bootstrapped a startup called Waysay that we built, sold the first 15 customers, and ended up selling the business after a little over a year to a mobile app agency here in the United States. And then from there, had a former executive of mine was divesting a company out of Experian. They asked me to come on and be a part of that divestment team, which was an opportunity to learn a whole new set of skills. Jumped in there as about a 1,300 person company, and ended up taking over global revenue operations, which included sales strategy, sales enablement, and a bunch of other things. So if you looked across my career, every step has been driven by getting bored in one step and wanting to jump into whatever the next fun problem was.
So it sounds like you're quite curious, which is one of the good key character traits of effective salespeople or success. I've been looking a lot into this and the drivers and what makes people do stuff. But before we get into that, who influenced you to do what you do?
In terms of in terms of Philo specifically, or in
Yeah, or
terms of
fine. Well, let's dig a little bit deeper than that because there's always people that influence people to do stuff or helped you along the way or got you to where you need to go. You sound like you like Salesforce and a lot of these other companies along the way, but there must be influencers, people that influenced you to do what you do.
Yeah, I tell you one of the key pivotal points in the story, and it was really the transition from engineering to the customer prospect facing world of sales. which is not a normal jump at any point in time. But went into engineering because loved solving complex problems, which is the natural place as a young
Yeah.
guy, young kid that you go to. And it was when I had just joined Exact Target. There was a guy who was the chairman of the company at the time, the head of the board. His name was Bob Compton. Zero relation at all. Did not know him, no relation, but he had a background with IBM before because of the similar last name and a background with IBM. He wanted to meet me, had an opportunity to sit down with him, and he looked at me and said, "You know what you need? You need to do sales." And I was like, I'm an engineer. I don't do sales. And he said, "Look, sales is all about solving problems. It's all about
Exactly.
using what you have. It could be a service, it could be a piece of software, it could be a widget, it could be anything, but meeting with other people and helping them understand how what you do can help solve a core problem in what they do." And he says sales many times can get a bad rap, especially if you're an engineer looking at it. But the key is you go solve people's problems. There's real value to it.
Yeah.
If you don't feel like you can, go find a job and go find a different job and join a company where you do feel like you can solve problems. And if you do that, you're never going to get bored, and you're always going to see the value in what you do. So that was enough. That was a key pivotal point of mine where then I just fully embraced this world, jumped in, and man, it's been a whole lot of fun since.
Yeah. So how do you define sales? What do you see it as? What's your core fundamentals on how you work?
I mean, it's really what I just said, right? So there are obviously core skills that you can have that can improve, right? Presentation skills, how you engage people, especially in this virtual world, in terms of a specific engagement or in specific presentation, how you navigate an organization, how you identify stakeholders, et cetera. But the way we look at it is everything we do from the very first conversation we're having with a prospect of ours is understanding what is their core problem, what is the thing that they're
Mhm.
trying to solve. We build a product that creates virtual spaces for people to come together and to be able to collaborate in a real meaningful way without having to fly all over the world in order to do so. So when us being able to sit across from a customer and find out what are they trying to solve, we have a bunch of virtual accelerators who are literally building companies without
Yeah.
those companies having to be able to fly into the same place. We have demo days where groups like 500 startups are their problem they're trying to solve is how do we form relationships between startups, investors, and mentors that can persist afterwards and lead to funding and board seats and everything
Mhm.
that will accelerate these deals, all the way to large organizations who have a core problem to say, hey, we just acquired a company and we have 800 sellers spread across the globe. I
Mhm.
need in the shortest period of time to get all 800 people on the same page. I need them to understand why we just acquired the company, what it means for them, how they articulate the value of it, what common
Mhm.
objections they may have, how things are priced and packaged, and I need everybody speaking the same language to all of our customers and all of our prospects. And I can't spend the days to fly somebody from Australia to San Diego or to Boston,
Mhm.
where they're taking 24 hours to fly one way, 24 hours to fly back, a day each way to recover from the jet lag associated with it. Those are 4 days my people are out of the field.
Yeah.
That's their core
Exactly.
problem that they're looking to solve. How do we do that in the shortest period of time? So we'll stand up a virtual space that they can bring everybody together in instead of spending 4 days of travel and recovery time, then the time in person for the training, all of that out of the field and away from their families. It
Yep.
took 8 hours total of a rep's time. They spend 4 hours one day, 4 hours the next. They not only hear the messaging, they come together, they discuss as a team, they debate, they work through objections together, they practice together, and then they're out on day three talking with their customers. So, and this is the similar way we approach sales. First, what's the problem they're trying to solve? I have to align 800 people all on the exact same message in a short period of time. Great.
So how do you do that? How do you do that? Because the reason I'm saying that, an underlying question, I'm a moderator on B2B Sales Magic on Clubhouse, and we were
Mhm.
discussing this yesterday. But how do you do that? How does this work? Because this post-COVID world now, everyone's re-evaluating time, effort, flying all over the world. That's a waste of time, money. It can be better spent in a more constructive way. And we look at time as a resource, and that's what we save when we solve these and serve others to make things flow a little bit easier, because that's what people want to hear.
That's exactly right. And first, let me take a step back and I'll talk
Okay.
about what we solved first, and then I'll come and answer your question to see how that applies to the specific problem that we even just stated. So
Mhm.
we are a group of people who are driven by what you just said. Essentially, our core belief is that you shouldn't have to jump on a plane in order to get work done,
Yep,
right?
exactly.
Now, you should jump on a plane for enjoyment, to experience new places, to get more diverse experiences, to form relationships, to go to dinner, to grab coffee, to go for a walk for somebody, to form team bonding experiences. Those are worth jumping on a plane for. They're worth spending the money to do that and the time to do that. But if it's just
Mhm.
getting work done, you shouldn't have to jump on a plane, fly someplace, spend time in crappy hotels in order to simply get the work done. That
But there is,
started.
sorry to jump in on you,
No,
but
no
there is
problem.
a close correlation. Like, we are all humans. We are tribal people in our brains and in our mind. There's the fight, flight, or freeze mechanism, which is the ancient type of brain. We are social creatures. So the connection that we have with each other, and I think that is a bonding thing that we do have to have. But I think it's now has to have its place. So when you're in a certain area, you still need to team build. But I think to cement, and I'm completely on your page here, but I'm trying to play devil's advocate here, we still need to see people in the flesh, depending on where we are along the process of the sales, the part of the sales program, or where you actually are on whatever stage that you are. Because I work with another company called Telsmart, and we do virtual training. So I understand the concept of where you actually are, but I just wanted to see, flip the script on your side of it and
Mhm.
see where you actually are with that.
Yeah, but just be honest if that is what you're trying to do. If what you're trying to do is build bonding relationships, then fly. There's no better way to do that than sit across the table from, well, my
Yeah.
feeling is there's no better way of doing that than sitting across from tables with somebody, breaking bread with them
Yep.
over wine, cocktails, beer, coffee, water, whatever your vice is, and learning about them and just spending
Yep.
time with them as a human being. That's what
Yep.
traveling for.
Yep.
If it's, hey, I feel like I have to travel because I can't get the level of training that I need, I can't understand and learn the work and the
Yeah.
content and the skill set without jumping on a plane, that's just fundamentally false. And
Yep.
that's
Agreed.
true. Everything from training, which is actually, not to oversimplify, but what you're trying to do is fairly simple, all the way to how we even got started, which was building companies. There is
Mhm.
a week we spent out of a venture studio called High Alpha, which is in Indianapolis. Former co-founder of Exact Target and a number of others formed this amazing company. They've started 30 plus companies over the last 5 years. They start those companies through a process called Sprint Week, which has been the most collaborative week I've ever seen in my life. You take 80 people, bring them together. You show up
Yep.
on day one. You don't know who's on your team till day one. You don't know what problem you're working on until you show up day one.
Yep.
You're assigned a team of 20 people. You're given a high level concept. You have 4 days to turn that into a business with a clickable
Oh,
prototype,
yes.
go to
I've
market
been
plans,
involved in that.
pitch it, and then they pick a winner out of those, match them with an entrepreneur, make sure an
Yep.
entrepreneur is matched, put some money in a bank account, form the entity, and you have a startup, right? And then you're off and running. Those
Doesn't
have
Seth
all been in
Golden do something like that as well?
who?
So I believe Seth Golden does similar sort of stuff. If you're coming on as an apprenticeship, but everyone's thrown in and you come up with an idea and you have to create a company out of it or whatever, and he does spin-off companies based out of that.
Oh man, he does so many things. He started an entire MBA program through something similar. It's really a phenomenal process, and it's led to some amazing companies spinning out. But it's always been in person, and the
Yeah,
assumption going back to March of last year was it has to be in person
yeah,
because you can't have that level of collaboration without being able to see each other and interact with them. And it's very semi-structured because you have 5, 10, 30 hour conversations that pop up and move around all over the place, and you can't do this from home. And
no,
what we found was you actually can, and all you need are three things. You need a structure to engage within, right?
Yep.
Because when you're in person, you've got tables and whiteboards and other rooms and chairs. And that's really, really important. Just how you interact with one another. You have not only the structure, but you need visibility. So you need to be able to see where everybody is and what conversations are happening at
Yeah.
any point in time. And it needs to be as frictionless as possible to start a new conversation. You see somebody you want to join, either you're joining in an existing or you're spinning up a new one. And those are the three things that we bring to the table.
Yep.
We built a prototype. We ran Sprint Week on it. It went phenomenally well. We started 4 companies that week. Actually, ended up being the most successful Sprint Week that's ever ran out of High Alpha. So 4 companies that without our product would never have existed in the world, and that led to a number of use cases. But something that was a bit of a surprise at first was how that branched over into the sales world, right? So now coming back to the problem we said before, and you asked, how do you take 800 people, 800 people across the
Yep.
globe and align them on something as fundamentally changing as acquiring a new company into your
Hmm.
portfolio in the shortest period of time? The same 3 things: having a structure to bring those people together in, to be able to navigate, to engage with one another, have visibility into who all's there, what conversations are happening, where people are at any point in time, and making it real easy, not only to connect. Now, connect may be watching a live stream, connect may be joining an active conversation with 40 of your colleagues that are your immediate team members. It
Yeah.
may be
Yeah.
running a workshop or a side conversation. You add those 3 things in, and you can solve exactly that problem, right? You need those 3 things: set the environment, bring people into them. And in 2 days, the team was so incredibly energized coming out of those 2 days, fired up about what was going on, felt comfortable answering questions. If they didn't feel comfortable, they knew exactly where
Hmm.
to go to get questions answered, and they knew who to bring into for support. Um, that same problem is at 800 person scale. Those environments, by the way, have also led to, we have say one customer who came to us and said, hey, what you just did for my internal team of 50 people, let me tell you about my prospect. I have a prospect. It's my largest deal of the year. This would make my entire year. It would send me to club. It would hit my number. It'll allow me to feed my family. And this is I've been working on it for 6 months. And I have an opportunity to bring the top 20 executives from that company together into a workshop to help them understand what their problem and how we can solve it. They're
Yep.
committed to it. They won't jump on a plane though. Um, I think I can use this product in order to do that. So they set up a workshop environment. They called it a virtual executive briefing center. They ran
Yeah. Yeah.
2.5, 3 hour workshop. And in doing so, afterwards, we were debriefing with her, and she said, you just accelerated my deal by months.
Wow.
Not only shot us to the top of the list, I think we were number 2 before this. You just accelerated it, where I think I can now pull it into either this quarter, definitely into next quarter. But it was because I not only could bring in my entire team, and have consensus selling into the organization, my main champion inside, it just cut her time to sell it back internally, because one of the biggest
Awesome.
problems virtually is you're talking to one
Question
person,
for
they
you,
don't know how to
actually.
sell. Mhm.
You seem very motivated towards striving for what you do. So, what influences you to do what you do? What is inside that is driving you? What's that fire in that belly that's making you to go, I need to do this. I need to do this. I can see it in your eyes. You're going, I want to do this. I want to do this. And you're very. I can see you're very ambitious. I can hear it in your tone and your tonality of your language that you're using. So, what is that fire? Where is that?
I think the core one right now is I live in Indianapolis, Indiana, which is in the very middle of the United States. Great place. We have a really good tech ecosystem that has been built
Yeah.
up. But look, it's not San Francisco. It's not New York. It's not Miami, Austin, which are some real big tech hubs here.
Yeah.
I've worked in big tech for a long time, and sold for a long time. The result of that means I've spent, from going back to 2008, I've spent 3 weeks of every month on the road,
Yeah.
on the road, on planes, simply because I felt I needed to get in front of my prospect, in front of my customer,
Yeah.
in order to get the work we needed done. And I've got a 5 and 7-year-old here at home.
Oh,
And
good luck with that.
now going back to March of last year, I've missed one day of putting them to bed in the last year and a half after being on the road, missing 3 weeks out of every single month.
Yeah.
And we've proven all that time I didn't have to. So the amount of additional problems that we could solve, the additional sales that we could have, the additional things that we could get done, the better teams that I could work on simply because I can't just pull from Indianapolis, but I can pull from Dublin, I can pull from
Yeah.
London, I can pull from Poland, India, Australia together and collaborate in a meaningful way. Is if we can solve that, then we can accomplish so much more.
I love that. That's really cool. And it's just amazing. Since March of last year, the whole of the world has just gone to a smaller place. People are reevaluating it. And for the likes of what you're doing now, is just awesome because there's so many products that are coming out of challenging situations. 2009, 2008, with the financial crisis, the dot-com bubble burst, other things came out of that, and this is making the world now we have the technology. I feel like the $6 million man here. I don't know if you remember that from back in the day, but we have the technology here. We have the faster broadband speed. Computers are pretty good. Microphones are pretty good. Like, we're all getting used to working like this now. And why not utilize it and use it and streamline the process to make it more better for everyone? And we're so used to sitting down now. Like me, I'm seeing my family a lot more often, which is good for our minds, and it
Mhm.
helps with our anxieties and everything else. So, what really is your proudest achievement to date? What really sort of inspired you?
I mean, there's been so many different problems we have solved for customers that it's hard to say which one's the proudest achievement. I mean, to be able to say there are 4 brand new companies on the planet that would not have been here
Yeah,
had we not built the product is pretty amazing. Similarly, we ran one of the kickoffs I told you about. So we had a customer that is global software company. They had 1,600 people. They were running to do their sales kickoff at the beginning of the
yeah,
year and company kickoff. And when they came to us, they said, let me tell you about my issues. The reason why we used to spend $5 million or more and fly everybody to San Francisco for this kickoff was
yeah,
because we not only could do main stage stuff and people hear the message and get the energy, but we have partners who come in and run workshops. We have teams who get together in pods and do their own kickoff and their plan to make plan, and their sales engineers and salespeople and SDRs and management can understand what their challenges are and how they're going to hit their number next year.
yeah,
We have reps can hear from each other in terms of storytelling sessions. All these things were so incredibly important. We don't know how to do any of that virtually, and it seems like you're one of the only solutions that helps us do that rather than just turning this into live streams. We did that for them. We set up an environment. They did all of it. One of the proudest moments for me was talking to them afterwards, and they said, our leaders and our sellers, and this was an events team, so that they all, you could see the pain in their voice a little bit in saying this. They said our leaders and our sellers after that are now asking that next year we do all of the work and the content virtually rather than having to fly over to do it. And the reason was because they were hearing from our executives and asking questions, and they felt like they were this close, right?
mhm,
Rather than sitting in the back of an auditorium and maybe yelling. And they said that was incredible. They put their kids to bed. They said what they did ask was, they said, if I'm in Europe, fly me to Amsterdam with my team for a day and a half. I don't
yep,
need a full week. I just want to go team building activities, have dinners, have lunches, share stories, and let's consume all this content and solve it. But
mhm.
while we're sitting at home without having to jump on a plane and spend our time really connecting with people. That was one of my most proud moments, was realizing, gosh, we're really changing the way that things get done.
Yeah, and it has. I think we've like the future of work, and I've had a look into that. Like, I studied that back in 2018, and I think we've just jumped forward so many years into the future. But now, if that makes sense, and I'd be interested to see where all of our sales relationships will be going into the future. I'd be interested to see from your point of view, how can we build more impactful internal sales relationships virtually, but external as well? But the future is just going so rapid, so quick now.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, selling it, you talk about internal versus external. There's
Yeah,
the external stuff around how do you navigate an organization? How do you help your champion being able to sell internally? So consensus selling internally, consensus buying on their side, but selling is a team sport. So being able to go out and you may be able to do a transactional sale pretty quick on your own, but that's because you have a whole team of people who have built products and
yeah,
collateral and content behind you. Or you're in a large enterprise sales cycle and you literally have consultants that are with you that you're relying on every step of the way, and you're just playing quarterback. So being able to take onboarding, we've got a bunch of companies who will use us for onboarding. The thing they're trying to do is, it's not how do we have lessons people can take and learn, because there's a bunch of asynchronous tools. There's some amazing ones. We've got a sister company who was just acquired by a company called Seismic, which are phenomenal in what they do. But it's how do we come together, a group of people, because we not only want to consume this together and challenge and do it, we want to have use this as an opportunity to build relationships and connect with each other internally, so that I now know if I'm coming in and hearing a customer's problem, I know the product manager who leads that
yep,
product. I know the sales
absolutely.
engineer. I can pick up the phone and call them and say, "Hey, can you jump in this workshop with me?" And that it's those pieces of relationships that are important. And I don't think there's much out there that solves for those right now. If you think of a new person coming into a 2,000 person company, how do you build those relationships when you're in your office every day?
Yeah. And I think it's now more than ever, it's collaboratively. So
Right.
the connection and correlation between sales and marketing are together. Whereas a few years back, they were separate. But now we all.
Yep. That's exactly right.
So we had a few technical problems here, but I think that's fine. But that's just the nature of the beast in this
It
world that we
is.
have in, of being remote, and that's just fine and wonderful. So the question I was going to ask you, if you were interviewing you, what sort of question would you ask you?
Oh man, that might be one of the best questions I've been asked. Is it a cop out if I said I would ask that exact question, and then I can end up in this recursive thing if I just keep asking myself what I would ask me? Um, that is, I honestly that I don't know. I'm struggling with that question in terms of what would I ask myself? If
But you're good at critical thinking, so you're probably good at answering questions already because you're quite a curious mind. So what questions would you ask yourself if
the
you
the
were to
ones
ask yourself?
the one I feel like we should get asked more, and we should ask ourselves more, is what should we stop doing? Right? So there's a bunch of stuff about what we should do, and we can keep adding this stuff on top and say, now we need to do this and this and this and this and this. But what are the things that we're really obsessing about right now that we should stop doing? And there's a bunch, say now, around being virtual and being remote. There's a tendency in many of these scenarios to say, all right, now that we're remote, people are getting
Yeah,
distracted a lot. So, in order to get over that, we need to make sure we really have a top notch production and focus really on the video production and make sure we have upper thirds and lower thirds. And it feels like you're watching Netflix, and it's really exciting on how this stuff comes together. And people are spending a bunch of time right now obsessing over making sure every little aspect of a virtual experience is perfect and polished. And
yeah,
honestly, I think that stuff is important. It's very important. I don't want to undermine it completely, but I think we should stop doing as much of that and realize a lot of it is just about sitting like you and I right now and just having a
yeah,
conversation. It's just about talking to one another. It's just about diving into issues. And if it's not perfect and you don't have slides embedded right here next to your head and it's not formatted in exact, you know what? That's perfectly fine. Just talk, listen to one another, listen to their problem, help people through different things. And if we do, we'll get a lot further as an organization.
I think one of the biggest skills and the core skills that anyone could ever have is these things that are attached to our head, which are called ears. The more you listen, the more you know, the more you know, the more you understand, and the better that you can actually ask some really good questions going forward. So, would you have any other questions that you would ask yourself? Because these are really good questions to ask you.
Um, I have tons of questions I ask myself every day. How you pick the one is I don't know. What one we're dealing with right now is how do you we have an entire world in a normal world where things are slowly changing, right? And then you still have to help people evolve. Everybody's world's flipped upside down a year and a half from now, and it's left change that is not going to stay exactly the way that it is right now. God willing, we get on the other side of this pandemic and things loosen up and we can get back in person with one another to be able to build those relationships. But what we do know is it's not going back to the way it was in February of March of
Absolutely,
last
yeah.
year, right? Things have fundamentally changed. What one of the things I keep asking myself is how do we get people to realize that they can think about the world differently? Because people bring their baggage with them. One of our customers was saying, "Hey, I need to recreate the hallway conversations that happen when we bring people together." They said, "Okay,
Mhm.
well, let's talk through that." And when we got down to it, we said, "Okay, what are you trying to do with those hallway conversations? What's the point of them?" Random conversations on their own don't really mean much. What is it that's happening there you want to recreate? And what they said was it's storytelling. It's that when people
Absolutely.
come together and they share stories of, let me tell you about a challenge I had last year and overcome. Let me tell you about this prospect that we won and what their problem was and how we solved it. Let's tell you about this big loss that I had last year and why they thought the competitor could do better instead of us and what we didn't articulate. And once they realized that, it was like, great, that can be recreated. It doesn't look the same way it does when you're in person, but
Yep.
we can create environments that have storytelling sessions that people can pick which one they want to go to. They're interactive and back and forth. We solved it, and that ended up being the most popular thing they did throughout the entire 6-month period that they were really evaluating how they work remotely. So it's how do we get what can we be doing to help other people understand that by just thinking slightly differently in the education piece,
Yep.
educate them that by thinking about things differently, we can accomplish many of the things we want to. It's just how do we what is the messaging that people will understand, because a lot of people are still stuck in the way they thought a year and a half ago.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Converting stats and data and whatever happened, but once you get a narrative and once you can get a compelling story, whether it's internal or you use the stories that you have and you share them around with your team, so you can actually do that with your clients as well and produce the best stories based on what has happened in the past. So you get that connectability and then you get your customers to tell you their stories, and that's the magic.
That's exactly right. And what none of those aren't those aren't necessarily technology problems, right? It doesn't matter whether our video is square or circle. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter whether we're just seeing each other on webcam or if we're avatars working ourselves around some virtual environment. It doesn't matter. All it matters is how do you create something that fosters human beings talking to one another, sharing
Absolutely.
those stories and interacting.
Yep.
And that's really the guts of problem solving and collaboration anyway. It's just um, yeah, humans talking to one another.
Absolutely. And that's why this is wonderful today, because you're listening to
Exactly.
the Global Sales Leader podcast. And that is absolutely awesome. I've really enjoyed the conversation today. And like we've gone all lots of different places, which is awesome, which I love. And I found out a lot more about you, which is even better. So how can people find out more about the technology that you have and how it operates and what it does do?
Yeah. First of all, our website. So Philo.co. So Philo.co. Go check it out. We do everything from run virtual sprint weeks, accelerators, demo days to sales kickoffs, training environments. workshop spaces, onboarding spaces for companies, reach out to us. We love talking about having conversations. We love hearing from prospects or customers, whether we can solve their problems or not. Let us know. Let's jump on the phone. You can also find us on LinkedIn, on Twitter at Meet Philo. Reach out and yeah, let's have that live conversation.
And all those other platforms as well. There's loads of them out there. So look, really appreciate this. It's been phenomenal, been educational, it's been inspirational, and I love what you do. And I think it's really good. And I think you're a good ambassador for what you do, because I can see that nervous energy of you, because you're very curious and you're very excitable as well, which is awesome to hear, because it's contagious as well. So thank you very much again, Matt. It's been awesome. So you've been listening to the Global Sales Leader podcast. I'm your host, Jason Cooper. If you like it, please give a 5-star rating on all of the podcast channels and be on YouTube as well. Like it, share it, do whatever you need to do just to make it go up there. And we're always listening to phenomenal people just like Matt. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.